Well, tonight, the nation's intelligence agencies are warning of cyber threats from Russia and are urging U.S. critical infrastructure defenses to be reinforced. As CBS's Bill Whitaker reported on Sunday night's 60 Minutes, it wouldn't take much to throw the entire country into darkness.
The grid is a sprawling target. There are actually 3 in the U.S., the Eastern, Western, and Texas has its own. Most of us rarely notice substations. There are 55,000 across the country, each housing transformers, the workhorses of the grid. Inside these massive metal boxes, raw electricity is converted to higher or lower voltages. Should a transformer explode, like this one in Manhattan during Superstorm Sandy, the system is designed to trigger a localized grid-preserving blackout. But if several sections of the grid go down at the same time, the shutdowns can cascade like dominoes. That's what set off the Great Northeast Blackout in 2003, leaving 45 million Americans without power. A few months before the assault on Metcalf, John Wellinghoff of FERC commissioned a study to see if a physical attack on critical transformers could trigger cascading blackouts.
It was actually a very shocking result to us that there's a very few number of substations you need to take out in the entire United States to knock out the entire grid.
Knock out the entire grid?
That's correct.
How many would it take to knock out, putting the entire country in a blackout?
Less than 20.
And Bill Whitaker joins us now. So, Bill, just 20 substations to knock out the entire system? I mean, that's unbelievable. But your reporting is it could be even less than that.
That's right, Nora. That report was from 2013, and it actually found the number was even lower, 9. Taking out just 9 critical substations could black out the whole country. We were told by multiple sources that the number has not changed much, that less than 20 is a fair assessment.
Well, what can the government do or anybody do about this?
Spend money, and spend it on 2 things. 1, to increase the capacity of these high-powered transmission lines so you decrease their vulnerability to large-scale blackouts. That's already happening through the administration's new infrastructure bill. And 2, invest in better security. But that's not happening right now. Remember, the country's 3,000 power companies are in the business of selling electricity, not national security. And this last point is really important because the threat is real. Just last week, 3 white supremacists pleaded guilty to plotting to attack power grids throughout the country, and they had a plan to hit critical substations simultaneously to cause a massive blackout.
Quite scary. Bill Whitaker, thank you.
What's up, guys? It is Wednesday, May 31st. It's 3:15 p.m. and this is going to be a deep dive, but not on black swans. Not on golden swans, silver swans, gray swans, but green swans. So Green Swan 2023, the climate transition in the real economy. What should central banks know about? So the BIS is having this conference right now, day 1, and then day 2 is tomorrow. And they're covering about the energy transition and climate scenarios, this, that, and the other thing. And honestly, back, I think it was a bit ago, like 4 months ago, we covered climate scenarios for 2023 to power the green transition. And then 8 months ago, IMF climate coin. And we're going to kind of tie some things together. I'll link these 2 videos in the description of this one if you want to go back to watch those. Because these climate scenarios for 2023, we covered it on, it was on the IMF website, but it was the network for greening. It is the NGFS. And we had covered this in the past, but it looks like they updated their website now. So we're going to kind of revisit this and go over the scenarios. So let's go into it. If you're new here, subscribe to the notification bell, leave a comment and a like for the algorithms, push it out there, and we're going to dive in. So a virtual conference co-organized by the Bank for International Settlements, the Central Bank of Chile, the network for greening the financial system, which we covered in those scenarios, and the South African Reserve Bank. As you can see, the day 1 is live as we speak. So the 3rd edition of Green Swan Conference brings together a wide range of high caliber policymakers, experts, and practitioners from different sectors to discuss more in detail the climate transition in the real economy. Day 1 focuses on new technologies and scaling up already feasible solutions. And day 2 is on the macroeconomic implications of this transition. And at the World Economic Forum, the annual conference in Davos in January this year, they talked a lot about the energy transition or the green transition and this move away from fossil fuels to a greener kind of way of doing things. So let's go down and let's look at kind of what was talked about, some of these key kind of sessions and who was there. So deploying feasible solutions at speed and scale. Let's go down, developing new technologies, Bank de France, macroeconomic implications. So macroeconomic impacts of transition and physical risks and analytical perspective. You have Mark Carney. He was the former, I think, head of the Bank of England. He was the one that talked about the homogenic synthetic global currency. I don't know how you pronounce it, but let's see. So this is more than 3 years old. 3 years old. But let's go back to the synthetic. I think it's homogenic or something like that. Yeah, so he had called for a creation of a wholly digital alternative to the US dollar. That was back in 2019 and on August 23rd. It's about 4 years later, and we're seeing that start to take shape. So he talked about how developments in the US economy by affecting the dollar exchange rate can have large spillover effects to the rest of the world. We're seeing it. While the world economy is being reordered, the US dollar remains as important as when Bretton Woods collapsed. So he talked about a digital currency supported by an international coalition of central banks. It is an open question whether such a synthetic hegemonic, that's how you say it, currency, SHC in short, would be best provided by the public sector, perhaps through a network of central bank digital currencies. And SHC could dampen the domineering influence of the US dollar on global trade. And we're already seeing the de-dollarization happen right now. We're seeing these countries launch their central bank digital currencies more on a wholesale level and being able to transact in their own local currencies. But there's something in the middle that's enabling these countries to de-dollarize and do that. So if we go down here, he did not explicitly reference cryptos. He did note that the relatively high cost of domestic and cross-border electronic payments are encouraging innovation, with new entrants applying new technologies to offer low-cost, more convenient retail payment services. So if we go down, the terms of engagement for any new systemic private payment system must be enforced well in advance of any launch. Well, it's been 4 years, so I think they're prepared now. So let's go back to here. So macroeconomic impacts of transition, physical risks. Yep, we cover that. High level panel, climate tech and transition in the real economy. What should central banks know and do about them? We have you got Augustin Carstens, head of BIS, Bank de France, Central Bank of Chile, South African Reserve Bank. And yeah, so we're going to go through some of the videos, see if we can find anything. Look at also any kind of publications or news that broke from this, which there was a piece of news that we'll cover. It was like Project Aurora came to a conclusion. So we'll go through that. So let's start it off with this. So when we go to the Bank for International Settlements page here, we go down a little bit and here it is. Project Aurora shows the benefits of combining payments data, machine learning and network and analysis to detect complex money laundering schemes. It also highlights that collaboration is key. So let's dive into it. So right here, the BIS Innovation Hub Nordic Center has successfully concluded Project Aurora, a proof of concept that explores new ways of combating money laundering with a combination of payments data, privacy-enhancing technologies, and AI, and enhanced cooperation across institutions and borders. So this was today. So here's a 5-minute video. Let's just run through it. I'm going to turn it on right now.
Is a global problem and has far-reaching effects throughout society. It fuels corruption, organised crime and terrorism, as well as environmental crime and modern slavery. It's estimated that 2% to 5% of the world's $100 trillion GDP consists of laundered money, or between $2 and $5 trillion. Yet only 1% of these illegal proceeds, $20 to $50 billion, are ever seized by the authorities. Detecting money laundering patterns is a complex task, Spotting these patterns requires the ability to connect data across firms and borders to identify suspicious networks and dubious flows of funds. However, the problem is that financial institutions, which bear most of the responsibility for detecting suspicious activities, rely on siloed data and systems and are often forbidden from sharing information with other financial institutions. This makes it hard for them to detect these complex money laundering networks and flows. Criminals use sophisticated cross-border layering techniques to hide the origin of the funds. For example, by using money mule networks. Money mules are people who intentionally or unintentionally help criminals launder money by receiving and transferring illegal profits on behalf of someone else. Individually, these transfers may appear legitimate, but when viewed as a whole, patterns emerge to reveal money laundering activities. Let's see how a typical money mule transaction works. A group of criminals make use of multiple mule accounts in country A to receive illegal funds. The funds are transferred to mule accounts in several financial institutions in country B. Finally, the funds are transferred to mule accounts in country C, where they will be withdrawn or moved further. A financial institution in country C might flag one of the transfers as suspicious, but it cannot warn other financial institutions because it may not know where the money has come from and because it's prohibited from sharing the information. But technologies such as privacy-enhancing technologies, machine learning, and network analysis open up new possibilities to improve anti-money laundering efforts, data sharing, and collaborative analytics to detect complex money laundering networks and suspicious flows of funds. Project Aurora has been developed by the BIS Innovation Hub Nordic Centre. The proof of concept tests the feasibility of analysing payments data that is securely protected using privacy-enhancing technologies. Using advanced machine learning to detect complex money laundering techniques across institutions and borders. Aurora has 3 parts. In the first part, the project created a synth based on recognised patterns of actual domestic and cross-border payments with complex money laundering techniques embedded in the data. In Part 2, the project applied different machine learning models to different views of payments data and measured the effectiveness of each in detecting money laundering networks and flows. In Part 3, the project utilised different privacy-enhancing technologies on different data sharing and analysis models to securely protect the data, while testing the effectiveness of the machine learning models in detecting money laundering networks and flows. When combining privacy-enhancing technologies, machine learning, and network analysis, the project was able to detect complex money laundering networks that would have gone undetected using siloed analysis and rule-based methods. Analysing networks and behaviours could be more effective in detecting suspicious networks and flows, particularly when including cross-border views of the data. Centralised approaches to data analysis using encryption could be the most effective in detecting more suspicious networks and flows, while decentralised approaches using federated learning could offer new possibilities to collaboratively train machine learning models and share insights without data leaving an institution or borders. Privacy-enhancing technologies could enable the secure and private sharing of data, as well as supporting compliance with privacy rules. And when combined with machine learning, they could be a game changer in improving anti-money laundering efforts to enable information sharing and collaborative analysis. However, more real-world pilots, run and tested at scale, are required to better understand the practical challenges, and public-private collaboration on this issue is essential. It takes a network to defeat a network. Applying the latest technologies and collaboration could offer new approaches to better combat money laundering, creating a safer and more stable financial system for everyone. Project Aurora, shining a light on dark money.
Shining a light on dark money. What a statement. So if we kind of rewind it back here, they're telling you, they're saying new, I think, what was it, like privacy technology, which to me would be characterized as zero knowledge proofs, I would say. And what's crazy is when I looked it up, 2004, 2004. So it's a special case when the statement consists only of the fact that the prover possesses the secret information. Basically, it's a way of validating a statement without revealing the data in it. And I'm sure that's how they're going about it, or there could be another kind of way. But I would say zero knowledge proofs, whether it be a centralized model, decentralized, or a hybrid model. And then they were talking about the problem being the siloed networks and there's no interoperability between the data sharing. And that's what this is going to solve. And that's this concluded. So they did a centralized, decentralized hybrid model. And think about like with privacy laws and like at the doctors and HIPAA is like, you can't share like the patient's health information. So imagine a blockchain that was specifically for the health industry to share patients' kind of health data with, say you go into a different doctor and they need to pull up your stuff, or you need to you're signing up for some app that's healthcare related. And instead of having to upload all your information in there, it's like you have your individual you own your data. So you could just kind of verify it with the blockchain via a zero knowledge proof. And then bang, it shares it. It's no privacy kind of concerns with that or any breaches of that. And yeah, this is where the future's headed. And there's some coins that specialize in this. Like I know Horizon is one. So Horizon is, right here. So it's a zero knowledge enabled network of blockchains. The future is built on Horizon. If we go down here, use the most powerful cross-chain protocol to build your blockchain. Permissionless, fully decentralized, audible transparency with privacy. So zero knowledge enabled cross-chain protocol allowing auditable and privacy preserving blockchains, bridging a major gap for real world adoption. So maybe they could have played a role in this. NTT data. So this is one, as far as one that's mainly focused on privacy. So if you didn't know about this one, Horizon. So let's go back. So let's read it. According to the Financial Action Task Force, almost all large money laundering schemes are cross-border and involve different business sectors. Meanwhile, financial institutions often face limitations in detecting potential suspicious networks and transactions due to their reliance on fragmented data and systems. That's why ISO20022 was so important. It didn't cause price to boom immediately right away. No, it's a stepping stone. You got to get all the stepping stones in place, and then like that, it can all change from a price standpoint. But you can't get to the price standpoint without doing all these things. It's step by step. So if we go down here, the project was successfully delivered in partnership with Lucinity, an Icelandic AI software as a service company in the field of financial crime compliance. Money laundering presents an intricate data challenge as it is one of the hardest activities to detect in the world of financial crime. Project Aurora demonstrates how technology can provide better tools to face these challenges. However, technology on its own is not a silver bullet. It requires new approaches to strong public and private collaboration. Supported by a legal and regulatory framework, it takes a network to defeat a network. So there we go. I think they have a report here as well too. 103 pages. Of course 103, but let's see if we can look up any keywords, see if there's anybody potentially involved with this. So this company needs a deep dive. John, the lieutenant, if you're watching this, look into this. But let's go down here, see if there's anything that kind of sticks out. So privacy enhancing technologies. So if we go to page 22, then they talk about instant payment systems and CBDC systems. So 22 and 71. Then it talks about a roadmap for enhancing cross-border payments, ISO20022 harmonization. So everything that we're talking about. So it's talking about blockchains used for payments, instant payments, and potential CBDC systems. I feel like it snuck all this stuff in there. But then federated learning definitely stuck out to me. But if we go to, I think it was page 22. Yep. So technology right here. So privacy enhancing technologies. So one of the key challenges in AML efforts is balancing the need to detect suspicious activity with the need to protect privacy. So PETs, privacy enhancing technologies, could offer a solution as they are designed to protect sensitive information even if data is distributed across multiple organizations, while enabling analytical methods to be applied to protect data. The field of PETs is a fast-growing area of innovation, and different PETs are available. So if we keep going down here, it talks about synthetic data, differential privacy, homomorphic encryption, and federated learning. So if we keep going down here, it talks about machine learning, graph data structures, go down. Summary of trends and opportunities. So a number of trends, initiatives, and developments in payments data standards and transaction monitoring could address some of the challenges facing AML efforts. The main ones are summarized below. The G20 roadmap for enhancing cross-border payments. So definitely these are like things to look towards as far as when does this come into full effect. It seeks to enhance cross-border payments via several building blocks addressing various issues, including financial crime prevention. Harmonization with the ISO20022 standard, which provides a common language and structure for financial messages that can be used by different payments, enabling greater interoperability and straight-through processing. A rich set of structured data with ISO20022 messages would benefit AML analysis. Then it talks about legal entity identifiers for data standards, and then payment transparency standards published by the Wolfsburg Group consists of 10 principles financial institutions should adhere to when processing payments. So then it talks about instant payments and CBDC systems. I'm going to look up some keywords like blockchain and stuff like that. So public blockchains used for payments, that's page 82. So obstacles, transaction monitoring on public blockchains is not a silver bullet, as it can be difficult to link transactions to individuals or entities due to the pseudonymity of blockchain addresses. Some blockchains provide a higher level of privacy by obscuring transaction details, making it harder to track the movement of funds. So recently, I think the news broke today that Binance was delisting Zcash and Monero, both privacy coins. And this is probably what they're talking about as far as some public blockchains, because those are public blockchains, make it harder to track the movement of money. Transaction monitoring on public blockchains can be automated using blockchain analytics tools. Then if we keep going up here, so off-ramping into crypto assets. With the growing popularity of crypto assets and VASPs, it is important to note that money launderers can use these channels to hide their trail of money. These typologies may begin in the traditional financial system, but can quickly move into public blockchains, in which it can be difficult to link specific transactions to individuals or entities due to the pseudonymity of blockchain addresses. Additional information from the VASP's KYC data and analysis of the relevant blockchains are necessary to detect these typologies. All right, so we're going to move on. So some key stuff in there that I'm going to look into after, like the Wolfsburg Group payment transparency standards, the roadmap for enhancing cross-border payments for the G20, the ISO20022 harmonization schedule. So definitely some key things in here, but let's keep going as far as any other things that they released today. So that seemed to be the big thing about Project Aurora offering a solution to the anti-money laundering and everything. All right, so we'll cover this because this goes in line with the green transition. So transition plans, the next step on the path to net zero. This was May 26th. It was at the annual general meeting of the International Capital Market Association, and they're talking about their transition plans. So following the market-led initiatives, the public sector is moving too. Regulators will expect the disclosure of transition plans in the future from 2025 for fiscal year 2024. EU companies falling within the scope will have to disclose the transition plans. And then if we keep going here, the regulatory framework for transition plans consider 4 aspects. So this is the network for greening the financial system. A group of central banks and supervisors, of which this person's the vice chair, is also zooming in on transitions plans. And they're due to publish their own stock take at the end of May. So we'll be seeing that today probably. So without giving too much away, let me highlight a few points. With regard to global transition plans, the picture is inconsistent. Where frameworks exist, they speak to a mix of objectives, audiences, and concerns. Coming back to my point about clarity, The stock take shows that there's not yet any common definition of what a transition plan should actually entail. Should it outline a strategic roadmap or consistently provide the emission relevant data? As we all know, good data are key, yet they are far too often lacking. So then they go into who will check these transition plans and against which standards. Going forward, supervisors might look into net zero transition plans for information on whether or not financial institutions are addressing risks correctly. Some supervisors are already exploring this possibility, while others are still on the learning curve. So they're engaging with the stakeholders. And to scale up transition finance, there is a need for greater clarity and harmonization across transition plan frameworks. To allow informed investment decisions, transition plans ought to be broadly comparable around the globe. In this respect, the work of the International Sustainability Standards Board is crucial, namely to establish a global minimum standard that jurisdictions can build on. This way, disclosure frameworks will become comparable around the globe, providing the base for globally comparable transition plans. So then they talk about scenario analysis. So a delayed transition, so they give backdrops and examples of some scenarios. A delayed transition backdrop of that kind would cause carbon prices to increase dramatically from the 2030 onwards. Carbon prices would hit nearly $400 US dollars per ton by 2050 under the assumed scenario. So climate scenarios illustrate the economic impacts of different emission policy pathways. The NGFS has conducted in-depth work in this regard. Its scenario toolkit has been well received among central bankers, supervisors, and also the financial community. And they're continuously upgrading their scenarios and their practical usability based on their exchange with users. So we need not only a long-term scenario, but also a 5-year scenario. This can be used for bank stress testing. It goes without saying that none of us have a crystal ball to tell what kind of scenarios will ultimately prevail. So let us take the example of a project that finances the development of innovative green technology. Here's the public sector might take part of the risk by offering equity. This will mobilize private money because risk will be shared. Furthermore, the involvement of the public sector labels the project as investable. Since fiscal budgets are limited, PPP has to be targeted and temporary. Also, in the global south, investors are lacking. Although we see a lot of promising projects, here the instrument of blended finance plays a major role. Multilateral development banks and philanthropic investors take part of the risk. Here, private investors also need to know whether the project is investable. Considering the urgency, the NGFS has launched its own blended finance initiative. It aims to highlight practices and principles for successfully scaling up blended finance. NGFS members are now working towards the COP28 International Climate Change Conference to showcase these deliverables of their blended finance initiative. There ought to be greater transparency surrounding the risks and returns of transition finance. In other words, as the transition framework takes shape and the risk reward profile becomes clearer, investments will follow. And then it's talking about the new EU Green Bond Standard is an excellent example of good cooperation. As we all know, the ICMA is a global pioneer in the field. In this capacity, has contributed significantly to the creation of European green bonds. By listening to each other and learning from each other, market-based standard setters and regulators can drive progress. Let's keep up the spirit and work on a more sustainable future. So they dive into it all. So let's go to, so September 2022 when I covered the climate scenarios. But they have a whole PDF here. So let's see where we're at as far as the scenarios. So it's seemingly more looking like we're going to have a disorderly scenario. It seems like they're urging and they're trying to pull everything in the globe together and coordinate, and it's not happening as they expected. So it looks like it's going to be more of a disorderly scenario, in my opinion. So it'll be a delayed transition or a divergent net zero. So it would lead to more of an abrupt, kind of quicker phase out of oil use. It seems like it's shaping up to be if this actually gets implemented. So if we go down here, so here's an updated overview. So phase 3 of the NGFS scenarios reflect the new country level commitments to reach net zero emissions made at COP26 in November. If we keep going down here. So it talks about how disorderly transitions can affect real financial asset valuation. So a repricing could take shape with considerable regional differences. Disaggregated into individual sectors, it's likely that sectors that can decarbonize less easily will be affected more than other sectors. So that's something to take note of if you're somebody that plays the stock market as well too. So let's keep going. So we can then move into this. So the future is uncertain. The NGFS climate scenarios provide a window into different plausible futures. Climate change is one of the defining challenges of this decade. Continued emissions of greenhouse gases since the Industrial Revolution have led to about 1.2 degrees Celsius of global warming. While this change is seemingly small, current temperatures are unprecedented in at least the past 12,000 years and affecting living conditions in many parts of the world. If left unchecked, climate change will have profound impacts on ecosystems, health, infrastructure, and the economy. That reminds me of a video I need to show. Many countries have started to respond, putting net zero targets and strategies in place to end their contribution to global warming. Such a transition can pose significant risks and would require substantial investment in every sector of the economy. New technologies and jobs would be needed to reduce energy use, eliminate emissions, and restore land. This would present unique challenges and opportunities, particularly in regions that have urgent development needs today. While this exact outcome is uncertain, it is foreseeable that some combination of these trends will occur. The next decade is set to be a critical period of change. So the climate scenarios explore a range of plausible outcomes. So now they have the expanded 2022 version. They talk about the physical risks, the transition risks, and technology trends, this, that, and the other thing. So orderly scenarios assume climate policies are introduced early and become gradually more stringent. Both physical and transition risks are relatively subdued. Disorderly would cause carbon prices to be higher for a given temperature outcome. Hothouse world, too little, too late. Climate scenarios have a number of useful applications. Climate scenarios were originally designed to provide policymakers with advice on the risk from climate change and identify a possible solution. They form a key part of scientific assessments, such as those conducted by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Since 2020, they've been adapted by the NGFS to help central banks and supervisors explore the possible impacts on the economy and the financial system, and they are regularly made available as a public good and have a number of useful applications. So what is new? So they have this whole presentation, an updated version. They have use scenarios and other explore scenarios too. So we're going to keep this on the radar. So as we move on here, what is a green swan? So green swan, swansg.org. This is January 20th, 2021. And what does that have to do with green finance? The year 2020 will be remembered by many for C19, but if we look beyond that, 2020 was a landmark year for a slightly less obvious, but perhaps even more pivotal reason. It was the year that, as a recent op-ed put, strong statements on climate change became de rigueur for the financial sector. This development could not have come a moment too soon. It has been widely documented that humanity faced the existential threat of climate change with the ability to act coming at ever steeper timeliness. The financial sector is deeply implicated in this crisis, as the capital channel through financial markets has far too long continued to support and uphold the dirtiest, most carbon-intensive firms. But how can we take stock of these ongoing efforts? Is enough being done? What are the main obstacles for more progress being made? Who are the key actors, and what tools and instruments do they have at their disposal? Those questions are precisely why we founded the Green Swan Initiative and what we will aim to answer. But what exactly is a green swan, and what do green swans have to do with green finance? The term originates from the black swan, made popular by the writer and philosopher Nassim Taleb in his book, The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable. The black swan didn't refer to a thing, certainly not a swan, but an event. This event had three main characteristics. First, it was extremely rare, lying outside of normal expectations. Second, it has an extreme disproportionate impact. And thirdly, even though it could not be seen before the fact, us humans still come up with ways to rationalize it, thereby making it explainable and predictable, but this can only come after the fact. The concept of the black swan, therefore, significantly reshapes how we think about risk. He tells us history is driven by these black swans, but at the same time, we can't possibly see into the future. So how can we prepare for events for which we can't even foresee? How can we alter our actions and behavior accordingly in view of this? So then it talks about it. And then it says there are also important differences, which led the Bank for International Settlements in a groundbreaking report published in January 2020 to outline the concept of a green swan instead. Unlike a black swan event, the onset of the climate crisis could be seen before the event, as demonstrated by the reams of research accumulated by the field of climate sciences thus far. If we fail to respond to a green swan, it won't be because we didn't see it coming, but because we failed to prepare for it. So there's one coming, they're preparing for it. And compared with black swan events, the impacts from the climate crisis, green swan events may even be far greater. As the environmental is deeply interconnected with the social, political, and economic, the impacts of the climate crisis will create a far wider chain of cascading effects, which will then have ramifications on our lives and livelihoods. It goes down here. It says, in this regard, given that C19 itself linked with human-induced changes to the environment, the C19 pandemic and the enormous fallout that followed can also be called a green swan event. Indeed, according to the authors of the Green Swan report, with the magnitude of the climate threat only growing larger, climate risk will also be unhedgeable. They cannot be eradicated, only managed. So this will present challenges to existing mandates that policymakers already have, such as the central bank's role to maintain financial stability. So in Singapore, the guidelines on environmental risk management for banks and asset managers recently announced by the Monetary Authority of Singapore represents early steps by Singapore's policymakers, but it will also mean that new forward-looking models of risk will have to be developed. It will also undoubtedly require a significant transformation of the financial industry as we currently know it. Only through such comprehensive efforts can we truly prepare ourselves for the green swans that the future has in store. Right there. So if we keep going here, this was a BIS Green Swan 2021 coordinating finance on climate. And then there's a ton of other ones as well too, like Forbes covering it, surviving the Green Swan. Event is a climate event that is unexpected rare. Ride a green swan, central banks grapple with climate risk. So there's all this talk about it. Climate change is a green swan, the OMFIF. It's crazy how they said in January 20, 2020, like months before, just a couple months before, a green swan climate event could cause the next financial crisis. And then it did. So let's keep going. So then IMF talking about a climate coin, creating a climate coin, fixing it to the price of carbon. So there's a lot of ways this could really pan out. So definitely watch this video. I'll link it in the bio. It's like it plays, because I had to sign up for Forbes or something. So it plays the audio like that and kind of runs through it. Then also this video, I discuss more in depth the climate scenarios for 2023 to power the green transition. So definitely watch that too. But as we all know, I mean, like Europe's more big on this. They release it a lot. The European Central Bank releases a lot about climate change and green finance. If I were to show you even just from today, even the Green Central Banking New World Bank study finds persistent system-wide and adverse effects of natural disasters on banking stability and calls on regulators to improve climate risk monitoring. So World Bank talking about it today. If we go down here, you have the European Central Bank finalizing their digital euro, but also always kind of releasing reports on financial stability and the outlook with climate change. So climate change and sovereign risk right here. Climate risk, transition, and physical can reduce GDP growth and fiscal buffers. Interesting analysis by my European Central Bank colleagues on what climate change means for sovereign risk. So it's the narrative. So we got to keep our eyes on it. Whether you believe in it or not, it's just something that could be a narrative to play out. So we got to track it. We got to follow it. We got to be on top of the scenarios. And we will. So I'm going to leave it at that. Definitely heavy eyes on the Green Swan conference taking place right now at the BIS. So this came out today. Project Aurora concluded. So we'll see what's in store for tomorrow. Also, there's some other big things coming up as well too. Our other conferences going on. I think the IMF is holding a conference. Yeah, right here. IMF starting now, opening remarks at a joint conference with the Peterson Institute on rethinking fiscal policy. We'll discuss lessons on the use of fiscal policy post C19 and how to tackle fiscal issues in the future. So there's a lot of things going on right now. A lot of key institutions that we look at. Even the Federal Reserve delivers opening remarks at the Fed Listens event. So a lot of things going on, a lot of things to track. We need all hands on deck for this. So we're going to keep it at that. And I will see you guys over in the Discord. The link will be in the bio, and I'll see you in the next video.